Welcome back to College Cooking. While eating in the dorm is bearable for a certain period of time, there gets to be a point in the semester when the mere thought of going to lunch at the dining hall just kills my appetite. I am long past that point, as we only have a few weeks of school left. Taking time to cook up a whole feast is out of the question, because who has time for that between finals? So I was trying to come up with easy meals that I could make from my dorm room that wouldn't break the bank. I've come to enjoy using my little crock pot, and I found these seasoning packets where you throw in all your ingredients, this packet of flavoring, and then let it cook. It's a whole meal in one crock pot. But I want to know which seasoning packet to buy that will be the best bang for my buck without wasting a bunch of leftover, uncooked food. Today I'm comparing 3 different seasoning packets: a chicken, broccoli, and rice one, a barbecue pulled pork one, and a hearty beef stew one. I wanted to compare these 3 because they all have a different main protein option, chicken, pork, and beef. I want to see what the total cost of the overall meal is, and if there are any additional side dishes to consider. Let's start with the chicken, broccoli, and rice packet. This recipe makes 6 servings of food, and for this one I'll need some chicken, rice, broccoli, cheese, and milk. So let's consider all these ingredients from the everyday low price of Walmart. I went ahead and put all of the ingredients on the screen, and then what they cost per what it's going to take to make the recipe. So the meal alone here would end up costing me about $7.51. If I split that up by the 6 servings that come from the packet, I would only be spending about $1.25 per serving. But what would I do with the other 7 pounds of chicken that I don't cook? Or what about the rest of the milk that goes unused? Keep in mind that the $1.25 per serving is only the cost of the ingredients that I used in the recipe, but not the cost of the total ingredients purchased. For the purposes of this video, I'll be comparing the cost of ingredients used and not the total cost of what I had to buy. With that in mind, let's move on to the hearty beef stew and see what that gets me. This package makes 8 servings of food, and I'll need beef stew meat, cut up fresh vegetables, and water. For the vegetables, I'm going to factor in about 2 cups of potatoes, 2 cups of carrots, and a cup of onions. This recipe seems like I'll need less ingredients, but let's see what the cost comes out to be. I went ahead and put those on the screen there, per what it's going to take for the recipe. So the whole crock pot would end up costing me about $20.03, but it would come out to be $2.50 per serving. That's about double what 1 serving of the chicken, broccoli, and rice packet costs. The one big difference between the 2 of these is that with the beef stew, there will only be excess beef stew meat and carrots, whereas the chicken dish would leave me with chicken, milk, rice, and broccoli. So even though the beef stew dish is a little bit more expensive per serving, there are less leftover ingredients to store in that tiny mini fridge. Finally, let's take a look at the barbecue pulled pork packet. This recipe makes about 10 servings of food and requires pork shoulder roast, ketchup, brown sugar, and cider vinegar. I went ahead and put all those ingredients on the screen and what they would cost for this recipe. So in total, the barbecue pulled pork would set me back $14.21, and it would cost about $1.42 per serving. I did notice that this packet cannot stand as a whole meal on its own. It would require buns and side dishes unless I just wanted to eat pulled pork by itself with a fork, which I do not want to do that. Additionally, I would have several leftover ingredients that I wouldn't necessarily use again. The ketchup I could potentially use, but what am I going to make with brown sugar and vinegar? Nothing that I'd choose to eat. So let's go back to the question of which crockpot recipe is going to give me the best bang for my buck without leaving me with leftover ingredients. It's hard to compare these 3 recipes on their own, so I decided to make a chart where I can give each recipe a score based on these categories: price per serving, leftover ingredients, usability of leftover ingredients, and add-ons required. So as you can see here, I have a little table, and I have chicken, beef, and pork on the side. So let's start with price per serving. The chicken was obviously the best, so it gets a 3, then the pork, then the beef with 2 and 1. So next, let's move over to leftover ingredients. The beef is going to do the best since there's only a few leftover ingredients, just the vegetables and the pork. The chicken is going to get the second highest rating because I have chicken left over and rice and broccoli. And then the pork is going to get a 1 because I have just leftover ingredients like vinegar and ketchup and brown sugar. Next, let's move over to the usability of leftover ingredients. You can see here that chicken gets the best because I feel like I could use chicken and rice on its own and make a meal. The beef gets the second best because I'll just have leftover potatoes and leftover carrots and onions, so I could potentially cook with those, but I would need some extra protein to get me through those. So I gave it a 2 because it couldn't stand on its own as a leftover ingredient. The pork gets a 1 because, as you could tell, I would need several other ingredients besides just ketchup and brown sugar and vinegar. Alright, last category is the add-ons required. The chicken and beef both get a 3 because both of those packages could stand on their own as a meal. So I gave them both a tying score of the best because they don't require any extra add-ons. The pork I'm giving a 0 because it would require some buns and sides and it just can't stand on its own as a meal. So that one gets a 0. So according to this chart, it looks like I'll be getting the chicken, broccoli, and rice packet to make for dinner. It had the best price per serving, didn't require any add-ons. It's a complete meal and it doesn't need anything else to constitute a dinner. While it has the second best score as far as leftovers go, it did have the best potential usability of leftover ingredients, so I might have some leftover uncooked chicken, rice, and milk, but I can feasibly drink the milk and cook up some chicken and rice by itself. On the other hand, even though the beef stew had the best score for leftover ingredients, in order to make something out of the potatoes and carrots, I would have to have some other ingredients to make a whole other meal. It's pretty clear that the barbecue pulled pork is going to be my last option when making dinner, as it scored pretty poorly in most areas. But I am excited for my next meal of chicken, broccoli, and rice. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Which of these 3 recipes would you like to try?